Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spill the Pea. This week, we're taking a look at Vayishlach. So, we start with Yaakov deciding to send angels to Esau in the land of Seir. He asks the angels to tell Esau that his servant Yaakov has been with Lavan for some time, and he's acquired a lot, and he's looking for favor. So the angels go and then they come back and then they tell Yaakov that Esau is coming towards him with 400 men. Of course, Yaakov is terrified and he decides that he's going to split his camp into two. Because at least if Esau comes and takes over one of the camps, whoever survives can escape to the second camp. So now Yaakov is talking to Hashem and he's like, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, you told me to return to my land and that you were going to make everything good. And for all the kindness that you have done, I've now been made inferior. So please rescue me. You said that you were going to do good and make my offspring like the sand of the sea. So what's going on here? Then Yaakov gathers various amounts of goats, ewes, rams, camels, cows, bulls, and donkeys, and he separates the herds. Then he has some of his servants lead the different herds, and he tells them to go ahead. And if they are to run into Esau, and Esau asks them who they are and what their business is, they should tell Esau that they are his servant Yaakov's, and everything is a tribute to him. So each of the servants that was leading a different herd received the same message to be able to deliver to Esau. So Yaakov basically figured, hopefully if I give him these gifts, it'll make him a little bit less mad. So by the time we meet, hopefully he's going to forgive me. So then he prepares his wives, his kids, all of his possessions, and he guides them across the ford of Jabbok to protect them. And then the fun happens. We're told that Yaakov was left alone, and there was a man that he wrestled with until dawn. When the man realized he wouldn't be able to beat Yaakov, he dislocated Yaakov's hip bone. And then the man was like, dude, let me go. Dawn has broken. And Yaakov was like, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. So the man was like, okay, what's your name? And Yaakov was like, Yaakov. And the man was like, you are not Yaakov anymore. You will be called Israel because you struggled with the divine and you have overcome. So Yaakov was like, okay, so what's your name? And the man was like, why do you need to know my name? And then he proceeds to give Yaakov a blessing. And then Yaakov names this place Peniel because Yaakov saw the divine face to face and was spared. And then the sun comes up. After all of this happens, Yaakov looks up and he sees Esau. So he prepares Leah and Rachel, the kids and the handmaids. He places the handmaids first, and then he places Leah with her kids, and then Rachel with her kids. He goes ahead of them, he bows towards earth 7 times, and then he gets to Esau. Esau runs towards him, he hugs him, he kisses him, he asks about all these people who are crowded behind them, and Yaakov was like, these are the children that God graciously gave your servant. So they all came forward and they bowed towards Esau. And then Yaakov was like, this is all to gain favor in your eyes. And Esau says to him, listen, I have plenty. You keep what's yours. And so Yaakov is like, if you favor me, please accept my gifts. Seeing you is like seeing the face of a divine being. So please accept my gifts because God has been gracious to me. So eventually Esau accepts and he's like, okay, so why don't we travel together? And Yaakov is like, we've been traveling for some time and the kids are tender and the flocks are tired. So you go ahead of your servant and we'll make our way slowly behind you until I come to my Lord at Seir. So Esau was like, okay, fine. Well, at least let me give you some people to help you along the way. And Yaakov was like, for what? I have favor in your eyes, and that's all I need. So Esau goes on his merry way. So then Yaakov goes to Sukkot. He builds a house, and he also builds a place for his livestock. Then it says that Yaakov comes into contact with the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan after he came from Padan Aram, and he encamped before the city. He set up a tent and he built an altar, and he called the place God is the God of Israel. So then Dinah, his daughter from Leah, was out overlooking the daughters of the land. And Shechem, a Hivite, saw her, snatched her up, and violated her. And of course, he became attached to her and he started to speak to her heart. So he asked his dad to allow him to take her as a wife. When Yaakov first heard about this, he was alone. But then Shechem's father, Hamor, came to talk to Yaakov, and his sons overheard what happened, and they were livid. So Hamor is begging Yaakov, please, please, my son is head over heels for your daughter. Let them marry, and you all intermarry with us. Give us your daughters, and take our daughters, and have the land. He continued, let me have favor in your eyes. Whatever you say, you can have. Just let my son marry your daughter. So Yaakov's sons were like, we can't let her be with someone who isn't circumcised. The only way your son can marry her is if all the men amongst you become circumcised. And then you can have our daughters, and then we'll have yours, and we'll all live together as one. But if not, no deal. So of course Hamor and Shechem were like, sure, fine, whatever, we'll do it. So Hamor and Shechem went to their people and were like, listen, these people are peaceful, so we're going to live with them. We'll take their daughters and they'll take our daughters, but all the men here have to be circumcised. So all the men from their city got circumcised. However, on the third day, when all of the men were in pain, Simeon and Levi took their swords and killed all the men, and they took their sister back. After they plundered the whole village, Yaakov comes to them and he was like, you all just caused so much trouble. Now everyone is going to look at me like I'm not a cool guy. There aren't that many of us. What if other cities gather together and overtake us? And Simeon and Levi were like, what? So we should have just let them treat our sister like a harlot? So God told Yaakov to go to Bethel, to make an altar, and to spend some time. And then Yaakov says to his son, get rid of your alien gods, cleanse yourselves, and change your clothes. Then we'll go to Bethel, make an altar for God. So they gave Yaakov all of their alien gods and their jewelry, and they started along their journey. Then Yaakov comes to Luz in the land of Canaan, and we're told that this is Bethel. He builds an altar there, and he calls the place El Bethel, because God was revealed to him when he was fleeing Esau. So then God appears to Yaakov again after he came from Padan Aram, and he told him, your name is Yaakov, but you won't be called this anymore. You are now called Israel. I am El Shaddai. Be fruitful and multiply. Nations and kings will descend from you. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac is going to be yours and also your descendants. So then Yaakov made a pillar of stone. He poured a libation on it, poured some oil on it, and again he calls this place Bethel. So then they journey from Bethel to Ephrath. Rachel was giving birth, and unfortunately it was a difficult childbirth. So she named the baby Ben Oni, and then she died. Then Yaakov comes in and he calls his son Benjamin. After this, Yaakov set up a monument over her grave. Then we're told that Israel journeyed and pitched a tent beyond Migdal Eder. Israel dwelt in the land. Reuben, the firstborn son, laid with Bilhah and Israel heard about it. And then we have a delineation of all the children of Yaakov. So then we're told that Yaakov comes back to Isaac, and Isaac is 100 years and 80 years. He was brought into his people, old and fulfilled, and Esau and Yaakov buried him. Then we have this whole outline of Esau's lineage. His wives come from Canaan and Ishmael, and much of his acquiring happened in Canaan. We're also told that Esau is Edom, and then this is where the story ends. So where do we start? Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. And Yaakov sent angels. Or are they messengers? Or maybe are they something else completely? Our thoughts carry energy, and energy is not bound by time or space. Energy also can become action, which is physical, or emotional, which is energetic. Energetically, we're all one. That's how you can think of someone and then they text you or call you or reach out in some way. So Yaakov sends messengers to his brothers to ask for favor. We're also told that Esau is in Seir, which means hairy or rough. Esau's nature was of the earth. It was not as elevated as Yaakov. So he's sending these messengers in order to elevate Esau's soul to the level to be able to receive him in compassion. So we fast forward a bit, and Yaakov is talking to the Creator. So he has these messengers, and then he elevates them to the Creator, life force. He's asking for help in the situation in the merit of Abraham and Isaac. And then he decides to send gifts. Many times when we give gifts or anything to people, we subconsciously are doing it because we want to receive something. What's different here is that when he is giving these gifts, it's in the purpose of continuing his purpose in connection with his creator. It's not coming from the ego. So then we have the interesting part. Yaakov is wrestling with this man as the sun is setting. Darkness is a time when we feel separation from the light the most. And in darkness, we experience varied emotions from fear to anxiety to sadness to anger. So Yaakov is wrestling with all of these things. In our minds, our thoughts have a voice. That's why there's often been the imagery of having the two people, one on each shoulder, one that's light and one that's dark. So Yaakov wrestles with the voice that's coming from the darkness. Many times we fall victim to this voice. However, Yaakov is giving us tangible evidence of what happens when we fight this voice with light. He knew that the Creator promised him purpose, land, something bigger than himself. And so he held on to that light while fighting the dark voice. So, what's with the hip being dislocated? The hip is related to and understood as humility or surrender, meaning Yaakov had to surrender himself to the Creator. But what does it look like to surrender? Surrendering is not a passive action. Surrendering is not a submissive action that means that you're losing. Surrendering means to release the need to appease the ego. To surrender to the Creator means, Hineni, I'm here. I know that I have purpose. I know that I was placed here as a vessel for light to emanate in this world. And I may not know how that looks or feels, but I am here and I willingly choose to be the light, to be kind, to give, to choose unity instead of separation. And then he's told that he will now be called Israel. So Israel can be broken down into Yashar, El. Yashar means straight, and El is the creator. So because Yaakov stayed consistent in his trust and connection to the creator, having the utmost faith, he was able to stay aligned, straight. We are not meant to have easy lives. We have been disillusioned into believing that life is supposed to be this cakewalk. But if everything was easy, we would lose our connection to our creator. This life was also given to us in free will. So when we willingly and freely choose alignment, we maintain Israel. And then the dawn comes, the light's coming. So now we have Yaakov finally coming face to face with Esau, and he bows 7 times. 7 symbolizing Shabbat, and bowing towards the earth, meaning he's coming down from his elevated state to meet Esau where he is. When we have conflict in life, so many times we want people to understand us. We want someone to hear us. We want someone to see us. How many times in conflict do you put yourself aside and choose to see the other person? Choose to not only hear their words, but to listen to what they're communicating. So when Yaakov does this, his interaction with Esau goes smoothly. Another note, we're told that Yaakov said, "Seeing you is like seeing the face of a divine being." If we are all made in the image of God, how is it that you can speak disrespectfully to someone? How can you be rude to someone? How can you shame someone? Yaakov knew his brother did not have elevated awareness. He knew his brother was not as connected to the Creator as he was, but he chose wholeheartedly to see the divine within his brother, in spite of Esau wanting to kill him. So, how often in your life do you choose to see the light in the person standing in front of you, in spite of knowing all of their dark spots? So now Yaakov is going to Sukkot and he builds a tent. Sukkot is a place of refuge, divine protection. So now, after he's gone through all of this wrestling, and the wrestling led to something positive, he's now building the foundation of a refuge and divine protection. He happens to build outside of Padan Aram, which translates to a place of exile. So, what are we meant to learn here? Exile is not something that's bad. Exile may be darkness, but as we've learned, darkness is the place where we can come closer to our Creator and allow more light in. So now we have the part of the story where Dinah, his daughter, is taken and violated by Shechem, who was a Hivite. We fast forward a bit, and Yaakov's sons found out what happened to Dinah, and they were not happy about it one bit. So then Shechem's father, Hamor, comes and begs Yaakov to let them marry. And Yaakov tells them, his sons tell them, the only way they will intermarry is if the men in Hamor's city will be circumcised. So we remember, circumcision is the releasing or the cutting off of the animalistic tendencies and urges that we have. We're to understand that in the place of containment, we are more susceptible to being reactive to our animal nature. It's exactly why when someone tells you no or you can't do something, you have this sudden urge to do it more. It's also exactly why our Creator gave us free will. Free will allows us to choose our actions from a place of elevated consciousness as opposed to remaining contained and closed-minded and reactive. So Hamor, Shechem, and all of the men in their city were circumcised. And then something curious happens. Simeon and Levi, Yaakov's sons, decide to kill them all. So Yaakov comes to them and he was basically like, look what you've done. You've put my reputation on the line. So the masculine is action. It's physical. But Simeon and Levi were young and they were not yet refined enough to connect their actions to that of the will of the Creator. And of course, they were doing something noble. However, it was an action taken from a place of misalignment. And when our actions are taken from misalignment, they can be quick, cutting, coming from emotions and leading to consequences that may not always be good. So just after this, the Creator tells Yaakov to make an altar. So Yaakov tells his sons to get rid of their alien gods, cleanse themselves, and change clothes. A god is not always a physical thing in the sense that many people often think. A god is anything that you allow to lead you, anything that you trust to give you guidance before your action. Thoughts can be gods, feelings can be gods, the ego is a god. Because of their offense from the situation with their sister, because of the emotions and the wrong they felt was committed towards them, they decided to take an action from misalignment. This is not to say that protecting what's yours and fighting for what's right is wrong. It's a matter of alignment versus misalignment. So after that, they make the altar and they call the place Bethel. They end up traveling some more. They come to another place, build an altar, and call the place Bethel. They travel again, and the Creator comes again to Yaakov and tells him that he will now be called Israel and he will be fruitful. So Yaakov made another pillar, anointed it, and called it Bethel. They travel a bit more, and Rachel is having another son. The childbirth was difficult, and she passed. However, before passing, she named her son Ben Oni. Ben means son, and Oni means grief or pain. So he was called the son of pain. Yaakov then comes and changed his son's name to Benjamin. Ben again meaning son, Yamin meaning right hand, which symbolically represents blessing or favor. So he was now called the son of favor. This is showing that our pain, our grief, or sadness are all direct lines to reaching favor and blessing. But it's a choice. We can remain in pain and get lost in the dark, or we can choose to focus on the light and on our favor in the eyes of the Creator. So we fast forward a bit, and Yaakov comes back to his father, Isaac, and we're told that Isaac is 100 years and 80 years. 100 is the foundation, and 80 represents maturity. It's also infinity. 80 is past the Shabbat. It's a fulfillment of Shabbat, and it's an understanding that Shabbat is a way of life. A part of how we carry life forward and bring infinite alignment, infinite fulfillment onto this earth. So 180 is also 18, which is high or life. So then we hear all about Esau's lineage. Vayishlach is filled with themes of transmutation from the beginning to the end, how we transmute our thoughts for good and transmute our actions. We're human, and our job is not to be perfect. Our job is not to fit into a box that has specific labels and identities. We are meant to experience all aspects of life, just as the Creator does, which is why we were made in His image. And as we experience these different aspects of life, we're given the gift of free will. Our free will was designed to lead us back to the light. It's not easy. A lot comes from wrestling, just as Yaakov did. But this is the whole point, and it's the beauty in life, that just as soon as darkness comes, so does light. We also forget that the darkness is laced with light. Another interesting thing that happens throughout this is that Yaakov travels to different places, and he calls different places Bethel, house of God. So no matter where we are, it's an opportunity to build a connection with our Creator. It doesn't need to be in a holy place or with holy people. Your connection to the Creator is infinite. It doesn't exist within time or space. We have been made to believe that only certain people or certain places can have direct connection. And it's not to say that certain people and certain places don't carry elevated energy. However, the point is that we can choose to elevate ourselves and elevate a place simply by choosing to connect, align with our Creator. No matter where we are, no matter when we are, and no matter who we're with. Yaakov also places stones wherever he calls Bethel. Stones are physical, earthly. This is directly showing us that the physical and the spiritual need to intersect to create elevation and alignment. We were placed on this earth to bring the light of the Creator into this realm in a physical way. And Yaakov placing the stones in places where he called Bethel is exactly showing us this. The physical is nothing without the spiritual, just as the spiritual needs the physical to have meaning. Thank you all for being with us, and we will see you on the next one.